feeling safe and supported. And for the partner or spouse of a member of the military, having supportive friends and family can help to improve their ability to manage the stresses of life as a military family. Receiving deployment orders kicks off a series of events and often stress-related emotions within the family. The spouse and children may experience an immediate threat to their security, especially if the parent of this or spouse is being deployed to a combat zone. There will be increased levels of anxiety contributing to tensions within the established family dynamic. Parenting routines will be challenged with thoughts of imminent reorganization of the family. The non-deploying parent may begin assuming more of the deploying parent's role, challenging that person's sense of self and causing further tension. Deployment orders and the subsequent absence will test the family's resiliency and the bonds within the family structure. The parents and the children's attachment styles will dictate their ability to cope during this time. Parents with secure attachment are more likely to have secure spousal relationships and generally provide sensitive and responsible parenting. Whereas parents or spouses with insecure attachment models will behave in such ways as to likely develop a negative model of self in their children. Children who learn insecure attachment styles from their parents displayed troubled behaviors, such as hyperactive clinginess, followed by dismissiveness or avoidance. The quality of parenting and level of function maintained by the non-deployed parent is the best indicator of a child's outcome when a parent is deployed. In the non-deployed parent or spouse, secure attachment functions as a buffer. They're able to mobilize internal resources and external support systems while maintaining psychological being and providing continued responsive parenting. Insecure attachments can lead to continued anger at the situation or the deployed parent or deployed spouse or children, depression, and psychological dysfunction. Children will have different reactions to deployment at different stages of their development and will take both psychological and behavioral cues from the at-home parent. If the deployed parent was securely attached to their family members pre-deployment, they often demonstrate constructive transformation upon returning home, showing distinct signs of psychological, spiritual, and social growth. However, if they were insecurely attached, or if the communication during deployment was insufficient, suspicion can lead to marital difficulties, depression, lower quality parenting, and generally poor family functioning. Tips to support family resilience during deployment. The non-deployed parent should attempt to maintain strong leadership within the nuclear family, especially during the redistribution of necessary roles and responsibilities of the absent parent. The non-deployed parent may need to rely on older children for help with younger children, but parent and child boundaries need to be maintained. The lines of communication within the remaining family members need to be strong and open, and creating or maintaining routines, such as family dinners, is important to creating a sense of stability. The Child Mind Institute has a list of tips for maintaining communication with the deployed parent, like trying to schedule a time to talk on the phone each week while allowing flexibility and understanding if the call has to be rescheduled. Though they're great tools, texts and emails can feel uneven if one person is carrying more of the conversation. So the Child Mind Institute suggests writing old-fashioned letters to the deployed parent. It feels personal, and children can be encouraged to contribute. Receiving recorded video messages from their deployed parent, perhaps reading a favorite bedtime story, can help incorporate the deployed parent into bedtime routines and allows young children to feel the deployed parent is more present. The Child Mind Institute also encourages sending a few photos from home to the deployed parent, but discourages sharing details that could serve to make the deployed parent more anxious or worried about their family. Remember, they're under a lot of stress already. Resilient military families often have commonalities. The most resilient families are able to make meaning of the situation by utilizing spiritual philosophies and patriotism. These families also communicate well and work together to solve problems. They're able to lean on each other and their established routines, as well as look to external resources. And the remaining parent is able to psychologically and emotionally maintain their role as the leader of the family. There are many resources available online for families experiencing the deployment of a parent. MilitaryOneSource.mil is one online resource for military families. They have pages devoted to helping with adjustment to deployment, including financial management and spousal support groups. And their program, Military Kids Connect, is a forum for activities, childcare, and other resources that children between the ages of 6 and 17 who have military families may need. MilitaryFamily.org is another website with great resources. Their homepage lays out all sorts of difficult things that need to be dealt with upon receiving deployment orders, such as budgeting, family care services, power of attorney, and even creating a will. OperationWeAreHere.com lists all sorts of deployment resources that are available for military families for free, as well as programs connecting military families with each other and offering counseling services. The online resources available for families experiencing deployment are practically limitless. Facing the deployment of a parent or partner is a scary and difficult thing. How the non-deployed parent is able to cope and support their family during the period of deployment is a good indicator of how the child will react. Working to maintain secure attachments, healthy relational hierarchy between family members, and comfortable routines, utilizing support system both within the family and externally, and employing optimism and religious beliefs will help families experiencing deployment through these hard times.
Thank you so much, Anna. Our next presenter is going to be Whitney Smith. She was an ICP intern and psychology at the UN student. She completed her undergraduate degree in international business at McGill University in Montreal. She got her master's in psychology from PACE and is currently enrolled in the PsyD Child Psychology program, also at PACE. She's going to give us more insight about parental incarceration. The United States has the highest incarceration rates in the world, and a substantial amount of the inmate population are parents. In Whitney's child psychology studies, much focuses on parent-child dynamics and attachment. The loss in the case of parental incarceration is quite complex. It has both physical and psychological elements and presents unique traumas.
As Diane mentioned, the United States has the highest incarceration rate in the world, and over 50% are parents. Around 5 million minor children have experienced incarceration of a residential parent, accounting for 7% of the US population under age 18. A major research question is whether the effects of parental incarceration are directly due to the separation from and unavailability of the incarcerated parent, or more broadly, to the phenomena of parental incarceration itself. These different effect types can be separated into direct or primary effects versus indirect or secondary effects. It has been a challenge for researchers to sort out these effects, and there is a lack of good data over time. However, notable conclusions have been made that the emotional, social, and economic effects of parental imprisonment are unique from the separation itself, and so it is not the parental absence per se that results in behavioral problems for children, but absence in conjunction with imprisonment. Social psychological theories of loss and trauma emphasize that our greatest losses become social losses of interaction, companionship, love, and human touch. The loss of a parent to incarceration can be thought of as an ambiguous loss. It is often unclear. Is the parent missing physically or psychologically? Ambiguous loss results from situations of not knowing if a person is dead or alive, absent or present, permanently lost, or coming back. It differs from ordinary loss in that there is no certainty that the person will come back or return to the way that they used to be. Parental incarceration falls in line with Kenneth Doka's ideas about disenfranchised grief, as the loss itself is not socially validated and does not fit socially approved categories, instead generating feelings of shame and embarrassment for the family. The loss is often not openly acknowledged, and there is no opportunity to grieve or mourn publicly. The experience can be likened to a funeral that no one attends. Unlike other contexts of loss, such as death or illness, loss of a family member because of incarceration seldom elicits sympathy and support from others. Some of the blame may fall onto the family because of social stigma and a common perception that the inmate's family knew about or contributed to the criminal activity. Some experts characterize children's experience in the context of parental incarceration as enduring trauma that is composed of ongoing and repeated stressors that serve to impede development. Studies have found a high prevalence of post-traumatic stress in children with incarcerated parents. Researchers found that a third of children with incarcerated mothers had sustained and vivid recalls of traumatic events even 2 to 3 years after the separation. Another study found 77% of children with an incarcerated parent showed post-traumatic stress symptoms, high rates of both internalizing and externalizing behaviors, and school difficulties. Problems increase in likelihood when compounding factors are present, such as witnessing a parent engage in criminal activity or witnessing their arrest. Some of the indirect secondary effects on families are contextual changes, such as declines in economic adequacy and process changes undermining family stability and parenting quality. Economic effects include the loss of financial resources to children as a result of parental incarceration. About half of parents in prison provided the primary financial support for their minor children, and so the family loses this financial support. The remaining caregiver may have to leave their job and become a single parent. Money may also be needed to be sent to the inmate or used for legal costs. Parenting quality and stability are also affected. There may be loss of an important attachment figure, leading to weakened attachment bonds, and so children may develop attachment representations characterized by ambivalence, disorganization, violence, or detachment. There are alterations in the amount of time caregivers can spend with their children. The remaining residential parent may also have a new romantic relationship following the parent's incarceration. Children may also end up in foster care. An estimated 11% of incarcerated mothers and 2% of incarcerated fathers have children in foster care. There may also be heightened family conflict even after the parent's release from prison. Three important factors that may serve to influence family outcomes associated with parental incarceration. The extent to which the parent contributed to family well-being and was part of the family system prior to incarceration. If they exhibited problematic behaviors prior to arrest and lived with the family, there are poor outcomes. Research is fairly clear that children with incarcerated mothers who are their primary caregivers seem to suffer the most intense negative effects than those who are already receiving stable care. Visitation is both a context for connection and a context for emotional pain. Therein lies a paradox. Visitation may arouse deeply painful emotions among family members, and in particular children, that involve reliving traumatic separation from the parent. On the other hand, visitation can be quite beneficial, and it seems to benefit some family members more than others. Family visitation may facilitate social reintegration for the offender parent, but may also firmly entrenches the family in the institutional life of the inmate. It is worthwhile to carefully consider under what conditions children and caregivers may thrive in spite of adversity. Resource adequacy, responsive and stable caregiving, meaningful emotional and social connections, and developmentally enhancing opportunities for children can foster well-being in spite of the problems a parent's incarceration may pose. Innovative solutions are desperately needed to help not only offenders, but also their non-incarcerated family members and children, and to break a dysfunctional cycle, foster developmentally promotive family processes, and offer hope to incarcerated parents and their families. A family perspective implies interlocking systems between offender parents, children, and caregivers. It means the family is center stage with regard to policy reform and intervention. A focus on family highlights the importance of child development, offender adjustment, and offender and caregiver parenting competencies. At the point of arrest, police officers need to be adequately trained to ensure the safety and well-being of children present during an arrest. Even when children are not present, those children whose primary caregivers are arrested immediately experience instability. Such experiences are traumatizing for children and present a clear safety risk. Reducing prison populations is an important mechanism for promoting social justice in general, and there are particularly good arguments for allowing family responsibility exceptions to incarceration. Although it can be painful, prioritizing contact with family eases the costs associated with family engagement while incarcerated. In cases where alternatives to incarceration are not possible, policies that prioritize proximity to family when assigning the convicted to a facility can yield a major benefit in terms of promoting family connections. Inmates who are connected to family are less anxious, less traumatized, and less likely to reoffend. Theoretically and empirically, a cooperative and functioning co-parenting alliance is a potent family force. There is an opportunity to involve additional family members. Grandmothers in particular are heavily relied upon to care for children affected by incarceration. Strong and collaborative co-parenting relationships between offender parents and their children's current caregivers enhances parental identity and adjustment during confinement and promotes successful parenting after release. Policymakers should also pay attention to what takes the place of incarceration. Assisting families and children of incarcerated parents requires addressing underlying substance abuse and mental health problems that often lead to incarceration. Similarly, the economic costs of incarceration are often linked to economic instability prior to incarceration. Programs that reduce incarceration while also tackling these underlying problems will improve health and well-being for children of incarcerated parents. Family well-being can be improved when reentry planning is ongoing and supported. Positive outcomes are also possible to the extent that a parent gained resources, skills, or psychological assets during incarceration that would prove to be helpful to their families upon release, particularly in terms of enhancing their competence as parents.
Thank you, Whitney. Natalie Pedersen, who was also enrolled in the psychology at the UN course, earned her undergraduate degree in psychology at Georgia College and State University and is currently enrolled in the psychology master's program at PACE. In her presentation, we will learn about how institutional orphanages cause delays in nearly every aspect of development for children, and the separation from any family structure can be extremely damaging and should be prevented or mitigated wherever possible.
Thanks, Diane. So as she mentioned, I will be presenting on children in large-scale group homes that are separated from their families. So research categorizes 3 levels of institutional care regarding the level of deprivation that children suffer from. The first is characterized by a global deprivation of the child's health, nutrition, stimulation, and relationship needs. The second has adequate health and nutrition support, but deprivation of the child's stimulation and relationship needs. And the third are institutions that meet all needs except for stable long-term relationships with consistent caregivers. And in all of these situations, even the best institutions cannot provide what a family can for children. UNICEF estimates that globally there are roughly 153 million orphans, with 5,700 more children becoming orphaned every day. 8 million of these are living in institutionalized orphanages that we know of, but many are unregistered and the number is likely higher. Over 80% of these children in institutions have a living parent, and a majority of them can reunite with their family for a better support system. So why are they in orphanages? Children can become orphaned through war, natural disaster, poverty, disease, stigma, or medical needs, but the main drivers of institutionalization often occur with living parents. The first is poverty. If the parents cannot care for the child, feed them, clothe them, or send them to school, they may find putting them in an institutional care a better option. The second is disability, learning difficulty, or illness. Families can lack the support or services needed to care for children with disabilities, or the local education system may not have inclusive care. There are also issues of social attitudes and stigma, as in some places, parents are encouraged to abandon their children if they have disabilities, as they're considered unlucky or cursed. The third is recruitment for child trafficking and exploitation. Parents, especially poor parents, can be offered money to give up their children. There are also some unethical adoption agencies that profit from holding children due to either donations or trafficking the children. And lastly, child abuse or neglect. Some families may be unsafe for children, but many institutions also have a poor reputation for violence, and a relatively small proportion of children are placed in orphanages due to neglect or abuse, especially compared with the other reasons. So how is this family separation harmful for children? Without a proper family structure, children face delays in crucial aspects of physical, hormonal, cognitive, and emotional development. Even certain basic functions, such as memory, auditory processing, and planning, they face delays in. These children do not receive the nurturing and stimulating environment needed for normal growth and development, both physical and psychological. In orphanages, group sizes can range from 9 to 16, but can also reach numbers of 70, and the ratio of children to caregiver is almost universally inadequate. Caregivers also change constantly for a number of reasons, whether it be high staff turnover, long shifts followed by longer off periods, or rotating between child groups. And the result of this is that children can see from 50 to 100 different caregivers just within their first 19 months of life. Volunteers, medical specialists, prospective adoptive parents, or even further adults who come and go in the children's lives. And the training that caregivers receive is minimal and primarily focuses on health rather than social interaction. So duties are often performed in a business-like manner with little warmth and sensitivity. All of these factors contribute to stress for the child, which manifests physiologically through non-communicable diseases, mortality, and long-term disease. So what solutions are available? First, avoiding institutionalization and separation from the family wherever possible is the best outcome for children. We can prevent this with community-based services to support the family, good schools, healthcare, financial aid, legal support, and services for parents and children with disabilities, as well as parenting guidance, child protection, and social protection can all be extremely beneficial to keep families together. It's also cheaper to support a family with social services than to provide for a child in an institutionalized orphanage, which is a big driver for policymakers in this field. For the currently existing orphanages, some simple and easily implemented solutions include better training for caregivers with universal techniques. Universal techniques and training are necessary in order to give children the emotional support that they need, as caregivers must understand the children's socio-emotional needs. Many use their own experience as parents to guide them through caregiving, which can vary tremendously, and some may not even have this experience. Another one, as noted earlier, 80% of children in institutions have a living parent. So some institutions have a very successful and comprehensive reunification process to reunite children with their families or extended family members. It's a very thorough process that includes family tracing, assessing the family and the child's needs, and like constantly visiting with the family and the child with a counselor or social worker to ensure that it's a successful fit, and that if there was something that placed the child in the care to begin with, it will not be an issue further with this family. And another route is placing children in alternative family-based care with smaller groups in a more stable setting with fewer caregivers. Replicating a family dynamic is the best thing for healthy development for the child. So lastly, how can we help? While we may not be able to implement global changes ourselves, there are steps we can take as individuals to help these children separated from their families, even if you are unable to adopt. One way is to volunteer with organizations such as Big Brothers Big Sisters or Kids Hope USA. Any type of mentorship to these children can help them develop strong bonds and relationships needed for emotional development. Additionally, if you have a small business or an NGO, providing programs or workshops that help children gain skills in things such as problem solving, decision making, communication, stress management, or other essential skills that they may be lacking in their current care can be extremely beneficial for these children's development. Donating time or resources to organizations that support families in their adoption journey can also provide children with homes and provide these families with a better chance at adopting these children. Some of these include Friends in Adoption or other agencies similar. And lastly, the easiest way to help is to share statistics and raise awareness about how substantial of a global issue this is, as every child deserves a healthy family setting to develop and flourish in their life.
Thank you, Natalie. Okay, so at this point, Cheyenne Clardy, a former psychology at the UN student and Meaningful World intern, was supposed to present, but unfortunately, Cheyenne's dad has been infected with COVID-19, and now she risks to be infected also, and therefore she was not able to make it today. Nevertheless, I would like to introduce her and her topic just a little bit. She graduated from College of Staten Island with a degree in international business and is going to graduate from PACE with a master's in psychology this year. In her presentation today, she was going to discuss women who have to leave behind their children to take care of other families' children in foreign countries in order to make a living. Children who are left behind may experience depression and separation anxiety, as well as struggle with their social development. UNICEF provided several guidelines regarding this issue, including more research on the family, then also ensure education, healthcare, and social protection, provide channels and alternatives that allow the parents to reconnect with their children. So leaving behind your children is a sacrifice that is difficult to grasp for most of us. And while we will not hear about it in detail today, this might spark some interest in our audience, and you might want to do some research for yourself on this very important issue. Okay, so this is my presentation, Separation in the Family During the COVID-19 Pandemic. So as of March 11th, 2020, which was also the first day of lockdown for PACE, the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a public health emergency of international concern. So I'll be talking about separation in the family during this pandemic, and we'll focus on the challenges of separation and loss, as well as give some tips to help everyone through these difficult times. The virus has affected all of us, so let's focus on the effects on children and parents first. First off, separated parents in custody. Many may actually not be aware of the fact how difficult quarantine has been for separated parents and the question of custody. It is obviously not recommended that children switch houses a lot at the moment, which unfortunately is the case for many kids with divorced parents. But it should be avoided, and parents are asked to reconsider keeping their child's as well as their own well-being in mind. As for infected parents and separation from their children, if one parent gets infected, that parent should self-isolate right away. We've seen Chris Cuomo in the headlines quarantining in his basement to protect his family. He definitely set a great example with that, and even though his wife was also infected, they are both out of quarantine now and they're feeling better. Cuomo is now addressing the mental challenges that he encountered while and also after the COVID infection, and I will give some more information on mental challenges a little later in this presentation. When it comes to infected children and separation from their parents, even though children rarely have to be hospitalized, if they do get infected, it is important to address that process. So depending on their age, they need a caregiver to stay with them. So most hospitals, they do allow children to have at least one parent visit, while other family members are asked to quarantine. A question that arises here is why children are so unlikely to get infected, and if they do, it rarely is a severe case. A study from China looked at 2,100 children ages 2 to 13 who were infected with COVID, and results showed that 90% actually experienced no symptoms or mild to moderate ones. So as this virus is still quite new to us, it is still not known why children are not a vulnerable population during this pandemic. However, children are also affected by isolation. While at first it may seem really cool to not have to go to school anymore or to wake up early, boredom eventually hits, and not being able to play with friends anymore seems really hard to understand. So in order to help kids understand what is going on, a collaboration of United Nations agencies, NGOs, and international mental health organizations worked on a book called My Hero Is You: How Kids Can Fight COVID-19. And to create the content, more than 1,700 children, parents, caregivers, and teachers from around the world shared how they were coping with the COVID-19 pandemic. So hopefully this will turn out to be a good resource for children during this time. As the virus spread, it became more and more obvious that older persons are especially vulnerable. Research actually showed that adults 60 years and older, particularly those with pre-existing medical conditions like heart disease, lung disease, diabetes, or cancer, are more likely to have severe, even deadly coronavirus infections than any other age group. The statistics from CDC you can see here as of March 18th show that the death rates increase with age and they spike after the age of 85. With that being said, it is important to keep our older population safe. We should, however, avoid isolating them completely, as this can have a toll on their immunity and their mental health. So we should always keep in touch and maybe show them how to use video chat if they don't know already, and make sure that they stay productive during the day. Many families who are momentarily trapped in a house together go on as they usually would. They have family dinners, they watch a movie together, or they walk the dog together. But essential workers, such as our healthcare heroes, people working at the grocery store or handling deliveries, are still urged to self-isolate if they return to a house full of people. So many have come up with very creative solutions, such as this healthcare worker who now lives in a tent in his garage. Others self-isolate in their basements or in their cars. They move in with coworkers, or they sleep and eat in different rooms as the rest of the household. And even though these essential workers may want to socialize after a long and tiring day at work, they obviously do not want to put anyone else at risk. So they make the health of their loved ones a priority and are being extremely selfless by accepting the loneliness that they eventually come to experience in their own home. Even though it seems as if the world is standing still, it is still turning and people are still passing away. May that be of the virus itself or any other cause. So obviously a death in the family or losing someone close to you is always difficult. And usually during those times, we rely on the comfort and closeness of others. Now we are being deprived of that privilege. And there is no great gathering to honor that person's life. And the people who are mourning, they are trapped in quarantine, denied the warmth of human touch, such as a much needed hug during this time. Some may even feel guilty about not being able to be there for that person who passed away, and they may feel like they should and that they could have done more. It is normal for anyone in this situation to feel frustrated, and it is recommended to stay in touch with your family and friends virtually during this time. And it is essential to stay connected and talk to others about the pain that you feel, because simply avoiding any kind of contact may lead to severe depression. So the longer we are in quarantine, the more challenging it gets for our mental health. No matter if introvert or extrovert, we are, after all social beings, and spending so much time on your own can be much more difficult than expected. So what are some prevalent impacts of separation? Something that deeply affects us and we may not even be aware of, and which I personally found quite interesting, is the lack of our daily microlifts. So in our usual routine before Corona, we would pop into our favorite coffee shop in the morning, or we would go to the gym after work. But now during the whole Corona pandemic, this is not possible anymore. And even though these events I just described seem rather dull, they are part of our everyday lives and they do make a difference in our day. Then a side effect of working from home is having constant and immediate access to the kitchen, which means that many fall into mindless snacking and are gaining weight because we don't get to move as much as usual. Especially for New Yorkers who run around all day and get in some exercise just walking up and down the subway stairs, it is quite new to just sit at home and not move at all, which then obviously has an extremely negative effect on the physical well-being. Then boredom and restlessness eventually creep up on you if you do the same thing every day. And laziness is another side effect when we feel that quarantine might be a really good excuse to just watch Netflix all day. Then also paranoid thoughts are probably something that we've all encountered by now. We keep seeing these numbers rising on the news and are now urged to wear masks wherever we go. So at some point we start wondering if we are not also infected, and even a little cough scares us. So the more time we spend on our own, the more time we have to build up negativity. Some may even fall into a negative spiral. We suddenly have too much time to think, maybe overthink, and tend to experience life dissatisfaction as a result. And then lastly, loneliness can become extremely frustrating if we don't stay in touch with our families and friends. So what can we do to take care of our mental health? We can start creating our own microlifts. You could, for example, introduce meditation to your day. It is also highly recommended to stick with a routine, to get up at a certain time, start work at a certain time, and then do something fun afterwards. Start some new activities, such as learning a new language. There's so many great online classes and apps to do so. To make you feel less sluggish, it is very important to keep a healthy diet. You could, for example, try out some healthy new recipes. You should also get some fresh air every day. Even though it is not recommended to leave your house, make sure to open the window for some fresh air. Take advantage of that balcony, rooftop, or garden that you may have access to. And even just looking out of the window has proven to lift the mood. Then also get into exercising. Nowadays, there are plenty of workout apps and home workout videos that can lead you through a great session. So now you have the time, there's no more excuses. To avoid that paranoia we were talking about earlier, the World Health Organization urges people to limit their news intake and keep things in perspective. So make sure that if you watch the news, that they come from a reliable source, and to limit your news intake to like once or twice a day. And most importantly, stay in touch with your friends and family. May that be through social media, video chats, or phone calls. Even though we may all be separated during these times, we have never needed each other more. And the support of your loved ones, even if from far, can make the ultimate difference. So as we can see from all these presentations, it is a real problem when there's any kind of separation, mainly because the family is the building block of society. So we thank you for listening and hope that this information was helpful and that everybody was able to gain something out of this. I will now hand it over again to Ryan Coe, who will handle the Q&A session.
Thank you all. That was very, very beneficial, very interesting, very fascinating. We have some questions that came in, so I'm kind of going to take them in backwards order. So we're going to start with you, Diane. The first question is, the closer family connections are, especially in a shared space, the more family members can be exposed if one person gets sick. The contact which usually sustains family well-being has become dangerous. How can families restore those ties during and post-COVID without endangering their vulnerable members? You talked a lot about virtual contact, which is a good thing, but it's really not the same as physical contact. So are there steps that people can take and maintain to be able to have physical contact with their family members?
I mean, as I mentioned before, there are certain families that are still together living in a house, and there's no other option. I know people who live in very, very small spaces together, and as we now got to know from Cheyenne, whose dad got infected as well, it's very difficult to isolate yourself from others, especially like if it's your family. If you want to keep in touch with someone, I think that it is possible. I've seen people even outside, like taking walks, but they keep their distance. So I think it's all possible as long as you wear masks, maybe even gloves. I don't think that you have to completely isolate yourself, as long as you stay safe and you protect yourself. But if you live in the same house together, it is rather difficult. I've heard of some people who they just don't spend like the same time in the same room. So they would not have dinner together. They would have dinner in separate rooms, but they would still talk to each other like through the wall, if that makes any sense. I think it is possible. You have to get a little bit creative though.
For sure. Our next question goes to Natalie. You talked a lot about orphanages and children in orphanages, and a lot of the demographics of the children in orphanages are that they have a parent somewhere, right? So if I, as an outsider, am looking to adopt somebody from an orphanage, are there steps that I can take in order to ensure that that child is really an orphan?
Right. Well, there are some orphanages that do family tracing, is what they call it, and they'll go through a pretty extensive process. They mentioned that it's like similar to investigative work of trying to trace down family members or extended family members. But if the concern is just wanting to adopt a child, and especially internationally, there's a very small fraction of children that do get adopted from these orphanages. So if you're willing to provide them with a stable family home, you're going to be giving them a much better situation than the chance that they have a living parent. Because especially considering that 80% of them have a living parent, it's not that that is a more likely scenario that they will be reunited. It's more just that they have that option, but it's not a route that's commonly taken. So any family structure is better. So whether it's your biological child or not, adopting them, even if they have a living parent, is a better scenario for that child.
That's really interesting, actually. Moving backwards in order for Whitney, you know, when you were talking, I thought a lot about the children of these parents who are incarcerated, and the statistics that a step parent or another romantic partner is often the one who perpetrates violence against the child. That we have a lot of child abuse that happens because of a step parent or a boyfriend of a parent or a girlfriend of a parent or whoever. And you also talked about, you know, visitation maybe being psychologically damaging for that kid. You know, it may be good, but it may be bad. And I'm just wondering, like, how can you protect that child? Like, what are the things that you can do to make sure that that child is protected from domestic violence at home, from the psychological effects of being, you know, the child of an incarcerated parent? Like, just really what can be done to protect those kids?
Thank you. Well, yeah, prevention is always going to be better than reaction. So I think it's like important to have these other family, maybe more stable family members involved in the child's life before anything necessarily happens. And also points to the really important role of school psychologists. I mean, school is like I think that's like why with COVID-19, it's like so hard for so many families right now, is like school can be a really important protective factor for children, where they interact with, you know, a school psychologist or counselor or teachers. So I think it's really important for those people in the school system to be really attuned to the warning signs of these negative things going on in these children's lives and be looking out for them.
And now that you bring that up, one of the side effects that we're seeing because of COVID-19 is an increase in domestic violence, because you don't have those school psychologists involved or those other, you know, mandatory reporters. That a lot of that domestic violence against children or spouses is getting unreported, and is on the increase. Any advice from any of the panelists on what can be done about that in today's day?
I think giving just like providing the tools for the child to still communicate, like with telehealth, or say they've been seeing a school psychologist or seeing a counselor, doing everything that's possible to have them still be able to connect with that person. I mean, it's definitely not as good, but I think I've realized, because I'm doing telehealth right now, that it's so much better than nothing. I don't know if anyone else has any comments, but those are mine.
Well, I can comment a little bit. I think that right now it's unprecedented, the level of interactions that we're having with the people that are in our immediate vicinity. So right now we're learning what those tools need to look like for in the future. While we're, right now still grasping at it, eventually we will have the tools to better address the stresses and safety and security anxieties that we're currently experiencing. So right now, I think, like Whitney said, just utilizing what we do have until we find whatever that magic X factor is that'll start to bring those numbers back down into a more reasonable level.
Thanks. Our next question is for you, Anna.
Mhm.
Well, I have two questions for you. The first one is, you talked about secure versus insecure attachment styles. Because we're all at very different levels of knowledge in this area and these terms, et cetera, I was wondering if you could expand on that more, what a secure attachment style is versus insecure. And then when we're talking about deployment, deployment can have other consequences like divorce and parental mental health issues, which can also be experienced as losses, and what can be done to help strengthen families and build resilience to prevent and address these situations.
So secure and insecure attachment styles, I am, I'm a master's student, so I use these terms a little bit flippantly, but secure attachment styles are basically like the level of comfort that you have with the parent or the role model in your life. So if you have an anxious attachment style, you're going to be like what it is. You're going to be more anxiously or avoidantly attached to them. You're going to have feelings of insecurity around how you actually are bonded with them. So you're going to always be worried about them leaving, versus secure attachment styles where you're comfortable and you know that your level of communication is going to be reciprocated. And it sounds like what it is. It's being secure in your relationship versus insecure or fearful of them abandoning you. And those things are important when you're bonded with any parent, but especially when you're bonded with a parent that isn't physically present, such as traveling a lot for work or being on deployment. What was your next question? I'm sorry.
So the next question comes from one of the attendees and says that deployment can have other consequences like divorce, parental mental health issues, which can also be experienced as losses. The dad that you get back from war is not the dad who left, for example. What can be done to help strengthen families and build resilience to prevent and address these issues?
In the research that I did, the likelihood of divorce and parental mental health or losses, like they said, the person you get back isn't going to look the same as the person that you sent off on military deployment. But the people in the family are also going to have changed quite a bit too, especially if it's years long. So oftentimes there are young children who don't really have much memory of that deployed parent apart from perhaps video messaging and emailing with this sort of anonymous figure almost. So there are resources available to help reintegrate, but obviously there's never enough help for our veterans. Reintegration counseling programs need to be made more abundant for both the families of the veteran as well as the veteran themselves. There needs to be counseling for the spousal relationship and for the children who potentially are like meeting their parent for the first time since they've gained autonomy. There are some prioritization of communication when they're on deployment for military members with families, but I think those also need to be made just like progressed as much as we can. Now that we have video messaging and the availability of much more frequent emails and stuff, we could be doing a lot more to make sure that they are staying in communication and avoiding the divorce and the anxious loss of not knowing this person very well. There are ways. I mean, we know through going through this COVID-19, we know that there are ways of keeping in contact with people who aren't physically close to you. We just need to start utilizing those the availability of those options more for our veterans.
So one of our frequent attendees, joiners, I don't even know, participants in our committee meetings is Pastor Darrell from the Baptist World Alliance. And he addresses the fact that COVID-19 seems to be having an inordinate effect on various social economic status subgroups, right? We can see that it's affecting the African-American population harder than it is the white population, et cetera. And it seems like there may be a racial element to all four of what of these items that you're talking about. So he would like you to address race, if there is a racial element that you know of in these 4 areas. So maybe we can just go in order of the presentation. If Anna, if you want to go first.
Yeah, I actually didn't look too deeply into the racial components of military families. I know that there is a disproportionate amount of non-white families that are in the military right now, but I don't have that information. I can look it up though if you're interested, and I can get back to you, Pastor Darrell.
All right, moving on to Whitney.
Yes, I definitely, in my research, noticed that race is a really large component, especially it's like a large community component. Like at certain communities, there's a disproportionate amount of people parental incarceration, and these are often in communities where there's more African American population. So I think that having, as I mentioned earlier, like really well-trained school psychologists, and I think like the role of the schools in those communities is even more important.
All right, Natalie.
Yeah, in the specifically in the United States, while we don't have like the formal institutional orphanages, we consider it foster care now, which is more of the short-term care. There are definitely racial disparities in the children that are in these types of programs. From what I've looked up, their minorities are primarily more prevalent than white children in these, but there are also the main concern of race, especially in global institutional care, is transracial adoptions, and more just that maintaining a sense of a child's culture and identity if they are adopted transracially, to still give them a sense of identity, because it can be damaging for the child to feel that they have lost that and are now like assimilated into this new way of life.
Interesting. That's really interesting, Natalie. And Diane, do you have anything?
Yes, so as COVID-19 is still pretty new, we're still waiting on some more statistics, obviously, regarding race, but some research does show that minorities are, for some reason, more affected. And as I said before, COVID-19 is a virus that does not discriminate. It's going to affect anyone. But I do like a reason that I think why minorities might be more affected is that maybe they do not have that kind of access to protection such as masks, compared to people from upper classes. Maybe they are not able to stay home as much. They have to go out and work. Maybe they are considered essential workers. I think that could be something. Yeah, but otherwise, we're still waiting on some more numbers to really figure out what is going on there.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, I just wanted to add one more thing that I think is important to mention, that tackling like the issues that lead to incarceration in the first place in these communities is really important, like substance abuse and violence and mental health issues. So I think like identifying communities that are particularly at risk and having those preventative policy measures, as well as like the school psychologist and the school system measures, is really important.
And since you just answered, just a follow-on question to your presentation as well, is what can we be doing as a culture to address the shame and stigma that surrounding incarceration in general, to make a culture that's kinder to prisoners, their families, make it less psychologically damaging for the children, especially to have an incarcerated parent? Any suggestions about what can be done?
I think having good education in the school about like mental health and substance abuse. I mean, just even those issues without incarceration, I think there's becoming a more like gentle approach and viewing these people as people who are suffering versus like evil criminals is really important. So having that education start from a young age is really important. And I think we're moving in that direction, but it's a process.
For all of you, one of the things that I really like at the United Nations is when the panelists can provide specific policy recommendations about what can be done to help in these situations, right? So are there specific things that governments, whether it be a city government up to federal governments up to the UN, are there certain policies that can be put into place to ease this separation and to make more an environment for more stable families?
Yeah, so I think implementing reintegration counseling programs that are more robust than what we currently have, like I already mentioned, would be really very helpful for the families when their loved one is returning. But generally, just like encouraging the prioritization of family communication while the deployment is happening, that needs to be done policy-wide, getting the people who do have families to be a much more prioritized group as far as making sure that they have access to the phone calls that they need, the video chats, and what they need to maintain their families and their own mental health and safety during these scary times that they're out of town. Otherwise, I mean, military families oftentimes come from military families, and there are support groups already available, but to make sure that there's a good network and that's as available for others as is possible, I think would also be another thing that we could work on as an entire policy change.
For me, I think an important policy recommendation is releasing more nonviolent prisoners like they're doing right now. A lot of these parents, there's more of a downside to them being incarcerated than an upside. I think you have to think about the whole family system. I also think that programs that support parents while they're incarcerated can help them to become a better parent than they were before. There is an opportunity for them to gain resources and skills during incarceration that would be helpful upon release.
Sorry, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just gonna, I mean, especially since children in orphanages, it's such a preventable issue. With the necessary resources, providing even basic education and just a lot of community-based services can really help prevent families from needing to give up their children for adoption, especially if they are living parents. I mean, as I mentioned, there are still places where things like disability are viewed as a curse or a spiritual problem. And a lot of this just comes down to the lack of education within the system. So with more resources available, like I said, it's cheaper to support a family on social services than it is to care for a child in an institution. So having more readily available and accessible community resources can really help keep a family together from the start.
Yeah, I was just going to add that COVID-19 has been extremely mentally challenging and also very challenging for governments to, let us as a population know what is right, like how can we deal with these stressors. It's like I said, it's still new and nobody really knows what's going on, so it's heavy. What I found great, that the World Health Organization, for example, they keep putting out recommendations, how can we not fall into that negative spiral, because separation is hard. We are social beings. It's difficult. Like, even if you are in an apartment with roommates or with your family, it's still difficult to not go outside and see other people, So the World Health Organization has been great in, letting us know we have to keep perspective. We can't, it's easy to say, oh, you can't fall into that negative spiral, because you might eventually. And we all have bad and good days, bad and good moments. So it hasn't been easy as for recommendations, but I think it would be helpful to maybe shine a more positive light on certain things. You know, the numbers that we hear every day on the news too, they're very broad. It's you really have to do your research to see who is really affected, like what is really going on. It would be nice to sometimes hear that some good news are on the rise somewhere. That would definitely be helpful mentally for a lot of people.
And then I'll kick myself if I don't just like state this. It's a little bit of a pet peeve of mine, or a pet project of mine, is I think that just generally the greater availability of the internet as more of a utility and not a luxury across the world would be really, I mean, that's not something that we can prioritize when people don't have clean running water and stuff, but in higher developed nations, the internet is such a barrier to a lot of people being able to get the jobs that allow them to work from home right now or allow them to communicate with their loved ones. And I think that having the internet as more of as less of an accommodation and as more of a utility is something that we're going to be looking at more and more as policies change and as we progress. You're muted, Ryan.
Along those lines, as an aside, the government of Estonia, granted it's a developed country, a very developed country, but they've declared internet access a human right. And they call it Estonia, right? And all the new apartment buildings, all the new houses that are built have to be wired and have to have internet available for everybody, simply because of that access to information.
And I think we'll see that they end up having a lot of good come out of that. Just that little change, that availability for people.
Yeah. We are coming up to the end of our time, but two more questions. The first one for Whitney. Just a simple demographic question. You mentioned the high percentage of inmates that are parents. Why does the US have such a high percentage of parental incarcerations, if you know the answer to that? And then the last question is probably mostly for Diane, but anybody can chime in. This comes from Lynn Walsh. Mutually shared humor and laughter releases tension and builds connections. As families may be stressed during home stays, can you suggest creative ways for families to lighten the atmosphere and enjoy each other at times? So basically, how can we turn this negative situation into a positive? So first, Whitney.
I think it's the fact that there's just so many people incarcerated in general for lots of nonviolent reasons too. I think there's a lot of incarcerated people, and there's a lot of people who are parents. And I think also a lot of the communities that are disadvantaged, there's less access to healthcare and like less education, and that correlates with higher birth rates typically, data shows. So I think it's just all in those numbers.
Okay. Well, as to my question, I think that there are so many ways that we can, still keep a positive atmosphere, especially if you're surrounded by your family or if you are with roommates or whoever you're with. I think there's so many ways to make the day interesting still. So, for example, if you have kids, you can maybe teach them how to cook something, bake something together, play games together, make up games. There's so many things you can do. There's a lot of quality time we can spend with, children right now, or just with each other. And like, I don't know, have a movie night together, things that you usually don't have time to do. I would do them now. Take this as an opportunity in a way, it's very important. Again, it's easier said than done, but keep a positive light on things. Try to make the best of the situation. Try to spend as much quality time as you can with your family, with your friends, roommates, whoever. Spend a lot of time on yourself too. Self-care now is so important as well. So yeah, I think there's lots to do, and it's just really important to keep an open mind. And again, I just want to stress not to fall into that negative spiral. And, you know, it's so important to talk. Like, you have to speak to other people. You cannot just keep to yourself, locked in your room, and just wait until everything's over. That's just not how life works. Life goes on even now, you know. We're gonna get out of this, you know, we're all in this together. So yeah, you know, like even this meeting we're having today is really uplifting in a way. So just having that conversation with you all. So yeah, there's
But
many.
it's nice to have interaction, right, outside of our family. I actually put on a tie today for the first time in like a month, and my daughter was like, "Wow, you look nice, Dad." But so this gave me a good excuse to do that, right? So I think that's it. I think that's it for our questions. I think that's it. As far as questions are coming in, does anybody have anything they want to say? Big fat no there. Well, we'd like to
Thanks for having us.
we'd like to thank you, Anna, Diane, Natalie, and Whitney, for your participation today, for the valuable, very, very valuable information that you gave us. A lot of compliments have been coming in as well on your presentation through both the chat and the Q&A portion. I'd like to remind everybody that's in attendance today that May 15th is the International Day of the Family, so look forward to announcements about that. And I'd like to remind the executive committee that we're going to stay on the line for a short executive committee meeting. But thank you all for your participation today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. Have a wonderful day.
You too.